So I guess I am guilty of overthinking things, definitely. And I have a hard time explaining things simplistically where if I was complete with a female companion, a proper one, she would help balance me out some. And, especially with my thinking, I don't think I'm wrong here. I just think that you're like, so you're going to ignore all the non consenting, horrific shit that goes on. Yet you're going to go after the weird consenting stuff for the Albastar demonic shaming that feeds the demons, like right, and it's hard to come to a right conclusion and decision in things in a world of illusions, and it makes people uncomfortable, and I get that. But I think it's the best way forward to prevent your families from being so fucked with, because that's what's important, right? Right? And then you can focus on the non-consenting stuff, like the horrific stuff that I'm going to mention in this video, right? Right? Or something. Anyway, without further ado, here's a few clips of me ranting here about stuff that I need to talk about, that needs to be talked about, that will be talked about, and I'm starting to talk about it. And there, na 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 na. And so, hey, hi everyone. Sorry, I don't edit my videos that well. But here, so I wanted to add this little bit in here because this guy hits the nail on the head, and he's talking with Redacted about the evils that Israel's allies do to Palestinians. And they're getting everyone to fucking abuse the shit out of Jesus's people, and then they have their captured and bought off Pope to fucking jerk you off because you call like raise an army and stop this, but you don't because you're like, well, we got this like New World Order bullshit, and it's like the head of the snake is Zionism and blah 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 blah, you know. So anyway, I wanted to show you this, and yeah, I got like 50,000 tabs open,
tanks and all of that. In actuality, this is marginal to the story. The story is about fear. It's about psychology. Israel wants to break the spirit of the Palestinians. In fact,
yeah, but that's like, that's like patterns of behavior. That's something that they do. They use your whole school system. I'm not even talking about some of the most extreme shit that I went through a few years ago when I'm getting poisoned with Roundup and I'm suspecting Walmart is fucking supplying the shipping, for it, and all this psychological warfare bullshit. Like as soon as you step out your door, there's a car that beeps every single time, and there's stuff, all sorts of subtle evil. Like if a lawyer was like, let's try to break the law, but not, be seen doing it. What do we do? And that's what they do, right? The global cult that David Icke talks about. And yeah, that's why they molest me with their children into my adulthood, because it's a psychological warfare. And then they get all the fucking child protectors in on it. And it's like, yeah. I've been around many children and I haven't had a problem except when the parent is, whether you're on the fucking child fucker side or the fucking protector side, because you could all look so alike. Wishing that I would violate them, and it's like, no, yeah, no, I've been violated numerous times, even into my adulthood. My grandmother was like, I'm tired of getting raped. And now I'm starting to understand what she was saying, because, I was programmed to be a gaslighter, and just be like, wow, that's kind of crazy, Grandma. Why would you say that? But yeah, what if you were raped, one or two times a year, and you just woke up one day with cum in your ass? And they could apply certain frequencies, whether they're radio or sound, or chemicals, to make you stay asleep. Or there's a short-term memory loss thing too, where I might have been aware for like 60 seconds or less, but then they hit me with something that made me forget. Right, but I know someone entered my room, apartment on November 20th. And that's just, anyway. And then they're all getting people to like talk about where to get a gun around me because they're like poisoning me and making me shit blood and giving me numb feet and having all sorts of sinus issues, and then having everyone pretend that it's not happening. Fucking jerk off Freemasons Illuminati. That shit ain't definitely going to get me to join. But also, I need to talk about this sort of stuff. So I need to talk about this sort of stuff, and these truths are uncomfortable. But I got this larger video ahead and everything, and yeah, I'm not trying to join it, but I think it's just going to cause the conclusion that I come to is just better for everyone else, and call me a monster or whatever the fuck, because I'm over it. I'm over it. I've never fucking violated anybody. The only fucking violation that occurs is when people violate me. And no, I'm not trying to manifest that shit, but I get to talk about my shit. I get to talk about my stuff, and I get to talk about my life experiences, and a lot of stuff happened to me, but it happened for me and the rest of you, so I could explain. It's like, oh shit, that's what they fucking do, and then they like shove things in your ass when you're a child, and then fucking when you're a child you don't want to be gay, that's really bad, and then they roofie possess you or your child, to make sure love doesn't work, so no matter what fucking female gets sent my way, it's never going to work. Then they could psychological warfare and be like, well, maybe he's gay, and da 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 da. I've had sex with a lot of women, although some people be like that's nothing, but I need to use more than two hands. I need like a third, to count, unless I was doing it the ancient way, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But anyway, so yeah, and yeah, so it's not something that I'm trying to join. I don't want to hate everybody though, and it seems like it's a lot of people because I'm all fucking caught up in this weird occult thing. So I swear, it seems like a quarter, a third, or what I really think it's like a half. Because the demons be breeding, like crazy. And then you're doing nothing but demonic shit stuff too on the fucking child protecting side in the name of child protecting. But then you should maybe get rid of your child prostitution services or CPS and just be more community focused, and maybe go around and gather lists from people, or make lists and go door to door and be like, who's willing to take care of a kid and blah blah blah, and just in case something happens, we keep them in the community here. They don't get shipped off to be trafficked, because that's what's fucking happening now. On top of like Jesus people being blown up, and ain't nobody doing an eye for that shit. Not necessarily that it needs to happen, but all this you got to remain peaceful stuff though too. Really, okay. Well, then what was Jesus? With the money changers in the temple, was that not violent? Like, I mean, every now and then, it's required to not get totally. You fighting back after being, first assaulted and attacked. Don't you have the right to, fight back if you're able? Right? But oh, you don't want to be violent, so you might as well just stand there and take it. And it's like, yes, peaceful is very nice, and we want that to be the case in all cases. But sometimes you got to fight for your lives, and you're all under attack. You're all fighting amongst yourselves. It's all really kind of stupid. And meanwhile, yeah, and then you're going after the fucking bread and circus show, how to catch adults looking for consent with underagers. And you're going to ignore all the non-consenting shit, and then you're going to ignore all the non-consenting stuff. What the fuck's wrong with you? Like holy shit. So yeah, I have some weird opinions and everything. Well, I've lived a very weird life, and things are going to remain weird, I guess. But it's something that I got to talk about. As well as the possession angle, because that happens a lot, and if that's happening and that stuff's real, then people deserve to know about it, right? So but oh yeah, I was saying about sex. It's like I've had sex with like a little more than a dozen women, and um and I never had good sex, because being sexually abused, And then I didn't even know I was having a problem until it was fixed in my fucking 40s. Talk about not being present. When a lot of family members, like my father, died and shit. What the fuck. I know my family did some weird shit, but there was one family in particular, and I mean, it seemed like a few, but one in particular that was really, doing a lot of evil things to me, especially brain damaging me with like putting lead in my water and shit and other heavy metals, probably, just to give me that migraine I'd always get over at that one, friend's house. And just, yeah, it's weird. It's weird. And I don't subscribe to a lot of the nonsense. It's just a lot of noise. And then you can't even focus on your fucking real problems. You can't focus about the shit in the air. You can't focus, the blowing up Jesus people. You can't focus that, ICE is just like raping underagers in America right now so they could breed demons. And no, that's not consent. Even, if they were like, underage, which I'm hearing a lot. That's happening a lot because you're under a situation of duress and coercion. So none of those, none of those or anything like that. It has to just legitimately be consenting for it to be okay. So in that case, it's still not okay. So don't get me wrong when I say just consent, because you can't be under a situation of duress or coercion, and being detained against your will, would fit those criteria. So, but yeah, some weird families do weird things. I'm not looking to participate in that shenanigans. At least, I was always thinking a Tupac sex party though, right? But there was a time where I thought a Diddy sex party was like a fucking Tupac sex party, but then I had those totally fucking wrong, and they're totally two different things. And I guess you live and learn, and yeah, so yeah, I think, but I don't, I also don't need to participate in it too. I'm just trying to, give back to the community that's helped me a lot. Not everyone here is an asshole. Some of you are really nice, really legit and sincere about it, and I appreciate those. There's some other ones that are some assholes though, but like that's the Freemason Illuminati shit. They cater to the fucking light and dark, sides. So it would be understandable how both of these groups are helping me, but like the light side is helping me. And I can occasionally mistakenly bark at a light person, but and I don't need to respond to all that, stupid psychological warfare harassment stuff. I don't need like someone trying to nice mask, nice mask, nice mask. I could do what a lot of them do is don't say anything. Right? And then I don't have, and I don't need to think anything bad either. I could be like thinking, oh, okay, thank you, and not say it. So yeah, learning how to navigate better. I still get caught up with like, oh, you're welcome, like when I open a door instead of say my pleasure, because I, usually holding the door open for someone, and I don't mind, whatever. And more, my pleasure is more accurate, so I should start saying that more. And so yeah, I need to talk about my weird stuff. This is the weird stuff that I need to talk about in the book. It's like a major level of psychological warfare that you guys, a few of you have thought of, or would think of. And that's just that. So yeah, yeah. I think that's it. You guys have yourself a good day. And here's the rest of the video. I'm terribly sorry. I wanted to add also that they would do this to Jesus or Jesus like people, and just get you guys to divide and conquer, divide you, and then you could be conquered. And this video beginning, really, it's by Matthew Cook. Here, hammers home the point.
The mass propaganda campaign that's battering Americans in Britain and the entire West, trying to convince them that Islam is incompatible, is terrorism, is outside of Judeo Christian values. This whole thing is a psychological warfare campaign, not just against Muslims, but everybody, all the people of planet Earth. The Romans had a name for this. It was called divide et impera.
Divide Impera.
divide and rule. The phrase
Yeah, divide and rule, and that's and the same goes for all the supposed child protectors going after what I would say is the least of the problems, but you give the illusion like it is like, a major problem, and then you ignore all the, non-consensual shit. You ignore the kidnappings, you ignore the torturers, you ignore the child eaters. You think it's okay to, murder, PDF files and everything, that goes way beyond an eye for an eye. Like, and then you like reward douchebags like Kyle Rittenhouse that just like, I'm like looking to like make homesteads and help people out in my own way instead of having some nonprofit handed to me, that feels like a scam, when they did that, but anyway, I'm like, and I could help myself out too. People are like, you could only help yourself out or others. It's like, what if I, bought like 100 acres and made a homestead, and built with nicer material than you guys do right now, so it doesn't get all moldy and, crap, Anyway, and then you look at the child murderers and that record themselves doing it and throwing pets off of buildings and everything, and like nothing, no eye for an eye there, and it's just, it's a real shit show and everything. And again, because I need to really hammer these points home, because there's going to be some douchebag bot or some trolls, and I'm not looking to join them, but look, I've been through it, and I don't need to get all loosed and upset and everything, but I also get to talk about it as well. It gives a big part of the game away, because it is all like a psychological warfare, and, I talk about these things, and I have a book that I've been struggling to make about it. And maybe I needed to really come to this conclusion, really. I'm just like, fine, just let, like, people raise their families, and then that protects all the good people, though. Like, whatever, they're gonna do some weird demonic shit. I guess demonic families do that, right? But if that protects you, then that's worth it. And I think that just less problems, it is actual like freedom. When you think about it, solves a lot of the fucking being forced, to take, what I feel are bioweapons, or jabs, as they might call them. And maybe have your kids stay home from school, and then you go homeschool them when you get back from work. And there's more benefits than there are risks, I would say. And half the fucking country is like doing it. If it really feels like half this country is doing this eyes wide shut shit anyway. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I've been sexually abused a lot, and I mean, I guess I survived it. So, and I'm not really kidnapped, and I don't have a gun to my head, like, suck a bunch of D's or something like that. So, it isn't the worst that I experienced, but it's something that I need to experience. So they go around and, like, get their children to like roofie molest you, into your adulthood, where you call it rape, but maintaining the children status. And it's like, yeah, they do that. Isn't that, and then you find, I saw Valhalla the other day, and he was all like, well, this so-and-so dude, and they're trying to hit up some 21, year old boy or something, and it's like, dude, that's their business. By that age, you're all fucking traumatized and erring, and it all feels right to them. And it feels right to them, and that's their decision to make. And then you're getting all fucking distracted and caught up in judging and shaming, and that's the demonic loose right there. Others, and it's like, I'm not going to get caught up in all that stuff. And I've been, taking a little more time than people would like to, really, clear my head on these things. The psychological warfare on me ever since I was like a fucking toddler, like, and they do that on a mass scale, and that's how your mass shooters get produced. And they were definitely doing what they did to Julian Assange in his prison to me back in the early 2000s. Right, and yeah, to turn out, decent like I have, people really do make great efforts to try to make me look a certain way, but I'm not really, that way. And the only thing that really occurs is other people violating me. Now, there's been a lot of helpers, and I'm grateful for the helpers, and I recognize the helpers, and I think about the helpers. But also, I need to get beyond this psychological warfare aspect, which is totally Zionisty, so I could proceed on to the actual sources of your problems instead of getting caught up and misdirected like a sheeple, like y'all seem to do. And don't tell me that people like bringing their 12, 13-year-old daughter to like fucking, the shroom meetup or something isn't some weird, like, secret, offer. I guess is the best way. It's weird, So you molest me with your fucking children into my adulthood. Good for you. And then you get like other people to like fucking have their child dressed like a slut, like at Jimmy Dore in fucking Denver. They put these children in front of me because children, like what were they? What, like 6, 7 years old or some shit like that? Would definitely be watching Jimmy Dore. Like, and then they sent me like what seemed like a lovely lady. Now, that I'm thinking back at it and everything, but you rub me the wrong way like that, and I'll fuck you off, and I prove it time and time again. You rub me the wrong way like that, shit, I'll fuck you off. I fuck your people off. Maybe she could have hit me up before, all this weird, covert warfare was, commencing. And then after an hour and a half or 2 hours of some covert warfare, then I just wasn't in the mood to hook up with your fucking silver haired chick. But maybe beforehand, but you always gotta fucking, and then blame me for it, right? You roofie possessed me to make love not work, blame me for that, blame me for that. It's all just illusion, it's all just bullshit. And anyway, they would totally do this shit to Jesus. You know why? Because they wouldn't be able to get away currently. They wouldn't be able to get away with just like executing Jesus, like their fantasy torture porn, dictates, in their minds. They wouldn't be able to get away with that. So what would they do? They would be like, oh, let's like what makes a molester or some type of monster? Because I've been through like how to make a serial killer, how to get someone to harm himself, how to get someone to harm others, just all sorts of fucking, like they like through the book, like how to make a monster, chapter 1 to the end, to the last chapter. And so I turned out very well, but they had, how do a bunch of villains in your government be heroes? How do they? They need to invent monsters to go misdirect the mob at, and I'm just not going to play these games. And and I could talk about it. I specifically joined a cult, or specifically not joined a cult, sorry, to talk about this. Because joining a cult is going to interfere with my divine mission, because then they're going to have some control over me, and I've been stalked by cults for life, and it hasn't all been bad. It hasn't all been good either. People bioweaponing my pets and then testing me to see if I'll figure out if it was parasites or not. And yeah, it's just a bunch of, and then, my pet's dying because of it. And they do these things. And they do them on a larger scale too. So when you hear about the, targeted individual, stories, they really, are light spiritual creatures that, like I seemed, I guess, a little demonic when you guys possessed me and everything. And then you did a bunch of inappropriate things to me, not no other way around. And then they use, and then they, fool the child protectors and everything, and they're like, yeah, just dress your child like a slut, and for the protection of children. It's like, man, like the shit that they're getting you guys to do straight up, and then like instead of teaching your kids to like just say no, and don't go on a show, and like there was this 17-year-old that bought cigarettes in Illinois. And there was this, the POS system, the point of sale system that I was using at the BP gas station, just had an update where it didn't tell you born before this date, because I just kind of mindlessly looked at it and then I went by that. And then they got rid of that. And then they sent in some undercover, to create a situation where I wasn't selling like to underagers. And I got that shit right all the time, except right when you do something subtle, change the point of sales, which they're all, yeah, this U.S. Intel community, they're all very, aware of these things. So, and this is just like one of the examples how to try to make me look bad. And then you come in on your birthday, nonetheless. So you just turned 17, but I miscalculated in my head, in my being made into an NPC, mindless fucking, sheeple that people were trying to make me into, and I got the year wrong. I miscalculated. I really thought she, just turned 18. I probably should have just double checked, and been like, I'll definitely do that nowadays, but I should have double checked with the coworker. But like, sometimes you get busy and then you make a mistake, and then but the computer was always there to like give me like a reminder, like, hey, before this day, in whatever year, and I didn't have that. And then they, cosplay hero, and it just invent a problem when there was none. She could have not done that, and everything would have been fine, right? But yeah, you get caught up into these stupid programs that are, definitely. It's like, I mentioned in one of these clips ahead here that they are like cops, where they go to a head shop and they're like, we know you got the drugs, we know you got the drugs, and they keep on sending people in there. But it's like that for life, for like, people doing the psychological warfare shit, on me. And then like, just like once or twice a year, let's like, roofie ritually rape him with our children. And then we're going to have our children bend over around him. And then we're going to get upset if he wants to talk about it, because this gives some of the game away. This is a perfect puzzle piece, especially with the sexual abuse. But an even bigger puzzle piece is the roofie possessing that they constantly do. And if that shit is real and that shit works, then, a lot of those people that are in jail, I mean, they don't even, the roofie possessor belongs in jail. Not, the person that got fucked because of some evil magic on them. And that's where some of the legitimate, maybe witch trial stuff comes in. But I think it was used for illegitimate reasons. So you got to always watch it when you're wanting to execute people, because a lot of those people would be on the innocent side. And there's been a lot of magical people that have helped me heal, and that I'm grateful for every day, but, there's a lot of evil stuff that goes on, and they always fucking twist it. They're like, a jiu-jitsu master, okay? So you got to fucking watch it. Like there's a lot of people that are onto the no kings thing. I'm not going to fucking bite on that fucking controlled opposition bullshit. I'm not biting on the no kings thing. And like I said, there's a lot of good people that are protesting for good causes. I don't necessarily need to be there if I'm trying to be a leader. Or are people trying to put me in like, a situation where I could be like, replaced and everything? Like, that's what it, sounds like. So maybe it's okay to be, low key and a leader, right? So anyway, they would do these things to Jesus, and let me proceed with my weird video and everything. And yeah, I guess, I talk about, weird things, but I really just come to the conclusion that, you'll have less problems, so you could better focus on the real problem. Y'all ignoring the fucking mass poisoning of your food supply and your air and your fucking water and everything. And yeah, maybe just kind of focus on yourselves. And yeah, okay, this Eyes Wide Shut shit happens everywhere. There was some lighter stuff in that movie that I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And some people are like, oh my god, that rainbow, store scene, the two scenes, actually, that was the worst. And it's like, no, actually, there's, it gets worse. So, and that, other shit creates a lot of noise. And I'm not trying to partake in it anyway. Thank you for sending your fucking teenage daughter wearing a see-through skirt, completely see-through clear skirt, that other day. Why couldn't you have sent that when I was in school? Oh, right, it was for the psychological warfare. So you know, like you deny me, make sure love doesn't work for me for all my life. And they're like, well, Chris, you could have this, now. And it's like, no, thanks. That time has come and passed. But thank you. I do recognize that, yeah, they still do sexual things to me, but it's really not voluntary. So anyway, and then people are just going to have to hear about this. This is my story, my parts of the story, my part of disclosure, and I feel comfortable talking about it, and I'm really over it. And whatever, if people want to get their panties unbundle over the shit that I have to say, well, then you're either like one of them or you're not using your brain. Like it's either or. But I think it would really free up everyone else. So you're not having your children be fed on and used and sacrificed. Like yeah, I know it's like, well, they're over 18 in the army and everything, so fucking it's okay to sacrifice those kids. And it's like, really, is it? No, I don't think so. But they definitely found a group that call themselves the child protectors, that really like over 18. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we get it, but there's, you're complaining about people going 35 and a 30 while there's motherfuckers going like 100 miles an hour. And maybe you should focus on the 100 miles an hour first, people, instead of the smaller fish, is all I'm saying. And then, allowing some more freedoms and families being able to raise their families as they see fit is a major protection for all of you, all the actual like light people and people that don't dress their kids like sluts and have themselves feel themselves up around adults for life, right? Especially starting as a child, with that fucked up psychological warfare stuff. So and then you're gonna talk to like James Holmes and all these other, I guess, mass shooter survivors or serial killers, and they're going to have like a similar story to mine, because what they did is they took a book of how to make a monster and they whipped it at me. All right, and I turned out very well. And I'm not a monster, but I get fed on by monsters, and I could call it out, and I could not be upset about it. I this is my story. And it's been a very nice one. It's been a bit abusive. Make me so self-conscious that I can't even fucking change in the locker room, without being self-conscious until like a year and a half ago. Around the same time I started having good orgasms. Fuck. And I still don't think I finished the points in this last video, but I was like, yeah, I've had sex with a few women, and I never had good sex though. And that's the point that I was really trying to make. And it wasn't their fault, and it wasn't my fault, but it was people like secretly abusing me fault. And now I'm well into my 40s with well trained habits into me that I need to, I'm dispossessed, but I still got the echoes of the possession and everything, right? And there's certain ways they have brain damaged me, like I have the facial blindness thing going. So, just all sorts of fucking shit. And then sure, I would say, I could have a relationship with a college gal. I mean, but that doesn't make me a bad person. Also, that person was probably abused, and there's nothing I could do to fucking help that or solve that. But, if it feels right for a person, even if they're airing, then that's their fucking, choice. They just want to, especially they see me as like a special entity, spiritual entity, so they want to get some sex magic out of me. And it's not going to be so one-sided anymore. And they're upset about that. I should start charging, for sex magic, and to make them more upset, because, I deserve and earn money through my sex magic. And yeah, so, but, sex has always been really hard for me, so, with very few exceptions. There's been some females with very strong sexual energy that have been able to break that fucking shell. But for the most part, I just, I'm really having a hard time, with others sexually. And it's been like that all my life because people secretly sexually abusing me, and then trying to fucking make me some sort of monster so the monsters could cosplay hero, and it's all a bunch of shit. And they would totally do this to Jesus, so you don't know what the fuck you're talking about if you think they'll just like whip him and torture him to death. And no, that's like when they fucking like take over the world, and they have their way everywhere. It's not quite like that yet, so they got to do it more secretly. These secret wars and silent weapons for secret wars and all that shit, right? So I get to talk about it, though. I get to talk about it. I've given up a lot to be able to talk about it, and I'm starting to talk about it. It's nice to, repeatedly talk about it because sometimes I need like 50,000 words to explain something that 5,000 words could. And then I start doing that 5,000 for a while, and then I bring it down to 1,000 words, and so on and so forth. So it's nice because my brain could be scrambled from all the psychological warfare, MK Ultra, fucking Project Monarch, all that stuff. So yeah, it's been rough mentally. I do appreciate the people who have helped me heal, though. Sorry if I bark at some of you. You could all look very alike, so and that's probably because it's a bunch of Freemasons and Illuminati, and they cater to both sides and everything, the evil and the fucking light. So that's probably why. And then also, your tactics are very similar. You just like the fucking leaders in America, they're like, we just want to protect people, so we got to do a bunch of evil. And then the child protectors are like, look, we want to protect children, so we got to do way disproportionate evil on them. You guys sound so very similar. And that's why I don't subscribe to any side. I'm on the light side, but I'm not into your fucking fighting amongst yourselves bullshit, and I'm not into the psychological warfare aspect of it. I mean, yeah, and I'm over it now. But I, get to talk about it, and I guess me doing these videos here helps me talk about it a little bit more and more. And anyway, peace the fuck out, and on to the what's supposed to be the original video here. Oh yeah, there's so much to talk about that I need to keep adding and everything. But part of the psychological warfare is that cop shit. So they, I was at a trap house, stalked for life and everything. I get attacked. I end up in jail. I get acquitted because I take it to the box because I ain't fucking taking a deal ever again. And then fucking because I was the one attacked, but there's all these fucking organized harassers using the guise of protecting others to do evils upon others. So I was at this trap house, right? And there were, a bunch of shit, there, and I was renting a room from there, and pretty much homeless, but I kind of had a place, but it was really hellish, and they made it hellish. Always sent assholes my way. And they're like, well, oh, Chris is interested in this legally young woman, and we have all these miserable meth heads around him that are older that he's not into. It's like, I know, right? They're like fucking little demons and everything with totally bad diets. But anyway, I guess that was one of the cases. But they would have like leave children in my babies. That would leave babies and shit at my place. There was one of the nicer meth heads and everything was taking care of the kid. And I would argue that in court for her. And then there was this mother and son that her son was really really young, and I didn't have an entrance in the doorway, right? So I have a masturbation issue because people tried like make me a sexual slave, like just threw the book at me, like I said. I didn't have a doorway, so I put like a bed sheet over it and tacked the bed sheet to it. And this kid, would always just enter my room all the time, even, when I was or wasn't masturbating, And then, I had my desk set up where I had like a blanket or a sheet over that too, and it was facing the door so no one could really see what I'm doing, you know. But yeah, and that's like the cop thing. They're like, "Come on, Chris, we're fucking, sending children your way. Why don't you, And it's like, well, why don't you go fuck yourselves, How about that? you know and that's the psychological warfare aspect of it. Roofie molests me a whole bunch and force me babysitting children. What you trying to do there? What you trying to do there? And I get to talk. I get to talk about this. I didn't turn out to be a monster. The only thing you could do is convince people somehow that I'm a monster. But, what I actually turned out to be is much better than, a lot of their fucking results that they usually get, that they're aiming for, you got to give the mob something. You got to give the mob something, and that's like, okay, a lot of this Epstein stuff is weird. A lot of it's surface level stuff. And I'm really happy that we're digging, into the darker stuff, like Hillary Hinton, cutting the face off of a fucking child and then wearing the mask like fucking Leatherface. Maybe you guys should focus on, some of the major fish, in your world, or not. Just continue fighting amongst yourselves and being conquered. You could do that too. I guess. But yeah, so it gets into extreme levels of harassment on top of like repeatedly fucking, doing major crimes on me and messing with my conscience, constantly roofing me for your possession or molestation or rape or whatever the fuck, you know, um, I have a tendency to wake up. But I think they got the formula down now. But like, when they were, experimenting, because I remember a lot of it in my 20s. I only just recently like woke up and discovered like lube or cum on my butt when I didn't do anything the night before. So, they've perfected their little roofing thing, I guess. But it took a while, especially into my 20s, and I have a tendency to wake up during operations and when they gas me or whatever the fuck, sedate me. So yeah, it's real. It's a level of harassment that should and will award me millions of dollars. Now they're going to have their little cover-up stuff, so I expect that money to come to me in non-lawsuit ways. So there. But maybe people could help me fucking sue too, because I'll take that too. Because fuck you and all your fucking harassment, trying to fucking MK Ultra me into some sort of fucking monster or some sex slave or some little bitch for your fucking like Hollywood or some bitch politician or some shit. It's like, no thanks. No, but like you definitely owe me. I'm owed. I could forgive. But I'm still owed. And I have no doubt. It'll be coming. So yeah, but people are going to try, illusion, and it's a level of psychological warfare that is very extreme and has been going on for many generations. I mean, it's safe to say thousands of years, but I just leave it at generations. And I have a whole book to write about all this stuff, and I needed to figure all this out. And recovering from the most extreme form of psychological warfare and mind control is no easy task. And yeah, so thank you for the helpers again. And how dare the other people, for because they just get easily misled. They're just like, oh, this is the worst stuff. We got to focus on this. Let's make a show out of it. Yeah, just like the Chris Hansen thing. It's just a fucking. So you're going after the weirdos that are like, fucking looking for, asking for consent, and you're going to ignore all the non-consenting stuff. And that's what I should have said, really, in the original video. And all these add-ons are starting to become longer than the actual video. But yeah. it is that's insane to me, and people need to start, saying it out loud, and you stop having the sheeple or mob misdirected, and get back on fucking task and at the bigger fucking fish. I can't, like, there's a lot of people caught up. There's a lot of the, I'm noticing during this Epstein thing, there's a lot of like actual like PDF files that are helping you guys out, and it's like, oh yeah, I mean, isn't that nice, and so yeah, I don't. I think it's weird. I think it's really weird, and I don't want to subscribe to it. That's not how I'll raise my family. Is that how you'll raise your family? Well, then that should what be what the answer is, right? Right, kitty. And then, yeah, my kitty cats don't do any of the psychological warfare stuff or any of this nonsense. I know, right, kitty? You're not going around. Well, I guess you fucking lick your butt in front of me from time to time, but that's just being a cat. I guess they lick their butts in front of me, but so do dogs and many other pets. But yeah, so yeah, I'm pretty much over it, and I could explain it, and people I find it very suspicious get really fucking defensive. It almost seems like you're on the child fucking side, but you're masking as one of the child protectors. So that's what they do a lot. And you need to have motherfuckers out here talking about it, and giving the game away, explaining the game, right? So yeah, it gets really ridiculous though. Some like cops think it's okay to just like do that to someone for life even, and you don't even have that aspect of it. You don't even have the lifelong aspect. They're like, oh, well, you just moved here like a few years ago, so they're like, da, 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 this is just new to us and blah blah blah. And anyway, I mean, there's some evil Men in Black stuff involved too. Don't get me wrong with that. But they fool a lot of good people into doing evil while making it seem like they're not doing evil when they really are. And that's, people should be aware of it at least. I mean, I guess continue to be tricked into hell, I guess, or not. I mean, these choices are for you to make, not for me to make them for you. Oh yeah, I wanted to clarify that one bit about yeah, Rufy molesting me into my adulthood, and then forcing babysitting on me, and then you have your kid feel themselves up around me repeatedly. I forgot to add that last little bit in there because that's important. Because again, what are you trying to do with that? What are you trying? You fucking violate me a whole bunch, and then have your children feel themselves up around me, which hasn't really happened that much around here in Denver. But in my past, and in the book I got to write and everything, it has happened. Right? So what you trying to do there? Interesting. And no word of the Catholic Church, really. I mean, you definitely, get their pawns. You guys might be familiar with this game here, and they got a bunch of pawns on the thing. So I think recently I heard Chris Hansen, busted like, a few people, and they were, keeping 30 children, and yeah, that's good. That's good that you, but also that's one of their pawns. They were working for the elites at the top. That was just one of their many tentacles that they have everywhere. So, and then I'm not really hearing the mass scale fucking molesting that the Catholic Church definitely does, and that your leaders fucking over the years have given them like immunity. They're like, yeah, they, and then the Pope could totally do something about Jesus's people being blown up, but he's like, it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. I'm going to stand here and jerk off all the Christians and Catholics and anyone that listens to the Pope, really, to just, commence the fucking genocide of Jesus's people. Like what the fucking fuck? Everything is so fucking ass backwards. And then you get in people's business, which, when you involve yourself in demons fucking families and everything, and the stuff that they do that I guess is survivable and whatnot, and they're all dancing around you. So there's a case to be said that they're doing better than fucking you, you know. So, but anyway, and then that shit comes around on you, where fucking Child Protective Services is now Child Sexual Abuse Services, and fucking ICE is literally breeding demons, you know, where they can't get consent for that stuff because they're under a situation of duress, being in prison against their will, right? You know, who fucking very few of you want to go to prison willingly. All right, let me say. But yeah, so yeah, you know, just the level of deceit and everything, just like that subtle shit they did at that BP gas station that I worked at when they suddenly sent in a 17-year-old on her birthday, so then I'd be extra confused on how old you actually are, especially when you remove the reminder on the point of sales equipment right before that. You know, it's these sneaky little things that they do. And I'm really good at spotting out the sneaky little things that they do because I've been through it. You know, it happened to me, but it happened for us. You know, someone had to be put through the fire to find out what the fuck they do. And, you know, who better than Mercury to do it, right? So, and that's why they also, you know, fucking seek, you know, sex magic with me. And I shouldn't be so, yeah, you know, I should be charging for that shit. For my magic services, which, you know, may or may not involve sex. All right. Peace the fuck out. Hello, lovelies. I was watching this interview with Tucker Carlson called Israel Shuts Down Christ Resurrection Shite. Bishop Strickland and Tucker. All right. So, yeah, you know, I think a lot of people think I'm like flipping out and everything, like, oh, AA and everything. Like, and I mean, there was a moment I was, I guess, mad or slightly upset. But you know, in the most part, I don't want to hear people fucking casting negative spells on them. So it would have been overall a negative experience. So you're like manifesting shit, you know. And then recently, I was like, you know, I still think the idea of a proper sex party is okay, you know. And so I'm a little, you know, freaky, I guess. I've been sexually abused secretly to be promiscuous. So, and I don't need to succumb to these things either, but I am trying to give back and, you know, help the nicer community members, even though it could seem like everybody. And that's like, you know, when people say it's like everybody, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's almost everybody, you know. But in my case here, you know, there's a lot of good people. You know, they help me heal and help me sexually heal. You know, and heal in so many ways. And you know, I have a, you know, some compensation with a nice place and everything. So it isn't all bad. But then like people bioweapon my cats and shit and fucking you know, act like dicks at times, and then it could seem like everybody when it's really not. And so I make that distinction. And anyway, so I was like mentioning I'm going to get like, you know, a tooth removed on the 16th, and they're like, oh, we removed your post and everything because you're going to have tooth problems. And it's like, no, I got a root canal. They said everything's fine, but I'm opting to get it removed because I feel it's like sapping energy from my body for a really long time and more as time goes on. And I've just had it. I've just had it with the fucking root canal, and I'm going to get it removed. And I'm very likely going to feel so much better after getting it removed. Not long after getting it removed. So yeah, and then I'm not flipping out. I just don't stand for certain shit, you know, especially when people are like, you're crazy, you're acting like you're targeted. Look, you know, and thus you're manifesting bad things. So we give you give us permission to do weird things to you, you know. And it's like, that's just not my inner state, actually. That's people's projection, you know, being, you know, put on to a lot of things. So there was a, you know, guy that was like, you're crazy. I'm like, okay, block, you know. And yeah, I get to talk about it without flipping out. I get to explain things. I get to talk about things. This is part of the reason why I don't join any cult whatsoever. So I can talk about it. So, nah, 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 nah. And people raping me, roofie raping me with their children into my adulthood, at least my 20s, but I've been roofie raped since, so it could technically be longer. I don't really know, and yes, you technically blame the adults behind that, but it's still, is something that I'm allowed to talk about, and that doesn't, rub people the right way because I'm a little defy cult, So yeah, it definitely groomed me to be many things that I didn't turn out to be. I still struggle with some stuff. That seems to be some lighter stuff. But like I have my marijuana habit, I have my DILDOS habit. But overall, I turned out way better than was some of them were shooting for, I guess. I'm recovering from being roofie possessed when I'm a child, which I call it the echoes of the possession, which are like the trained into your habits, right? I don't know. I haven't read a book about this shit or had a book read to me about it. So yeah, and then there's a trained into me bad habits, and then the most extreme, forms of mind control people could go through, or some of the most extreme forms of mind control that anyone could go through. So I think I'm really doing fine. A little slow going. I really feel that root canal I got in my mouth that I have scheduled to have removed in a few weeks here is really going to be a game changer. Because I really feel it's like dragging me down and everything. And you know what? I have a hard time participating in weird sexual shit, even if it's all, consensual and cool. Just because I'm, been abused like my whole life, and then especially, of course, you send me girls when I'm a boy, women when I'm a man, to just like reject me, just to add that psychological warfare aspect into it too. Just a whole bunch of nonsense shit. I really, probably going to give you bad reflections in the next world, but whatever. That's on their collective asses, and yeah, so I'm not really that upset about it. I was actually kind of relieved on it. I was like, oh wow. I was making a post. I'm going to attend a place, a weekend before I get my tooth removed, and they're like, oh, we removed it, and it's just like more often than not, they always mask, evil deeds in nice things. And that's what, some people don't fucking really get. And so they do these weird organized harassment still, I guess, they're trying to ramp things up because they're like, your interstate Chris is really fucked up, really, because I'm sure you're blasting me with some fucking biological monitoring shit, and I'm not really freaking out is the thing. I'm just, I fuck you off like, oh, you said it was crazy. Well, okay, block, bye. I'm not going to commune with you anymore. That's a made up rule that I live by. I don't care if you're a neighbor or coworker or friend or family member or some stranger, especially. If you're just like, you're crazy, bye. I'm just not even going to, waste any more words. And yeah, so yeah, I'd be all right, And I was, again, I tried to participate because they're all like, I got surrounded by a bunch of Satanists and everything. I got the cool Christians too, and yeah, I'm like, look, I think I could participate in like a Tupac, party, but not like a Diddy one because I'm just not into roofie raping. So anyway, I have always said that like I'm gonna show up to like a sex party or orgy and I'm just gonna bounce on a dildo and then I'm gonna leave, and that right there is power. Yeah, I really feel it is power, because then I'm not being sexually controlled by others, which is power. Like I do have my faults and everything. I'm not perfect, but I've come a long way from 5 years ago. About the time when I got the root canal done, that was really stupid. That was really, really stupid of me to get a root canal. I should have just got it removed. But anyway, we're correcting the problem, and I'm not freaking out. And I get to talk about this stuff just because I like being honest and authentic and talking about things, and things that people do, and it's a fucked up puzzle piece, but it fits in perfectly with everything that's being disclosed lately. So yeah, they go around roofie rape adults with their children, and then participate in the child sex fucking, and then rook the fucking child protectors around by getting their children that they just had, sex parties with, to, you know, they're like, look, she's actually really innocent, and blah blah blah, and you quote unquote try to catch a predator, but you're really just catching a lot of consenting adults that are mostly hitting up your almost adult, and so you're not going after the child eaters, you're not going after the torturers and murderers, and you're just kind of like giving that incentive for the Catholic Church to mass scale molest most of you. So then you guys just fight amongst yourselves, right? You guys just fight. They said in that interview with Tucker Carlson and that bishop, that like focusing on the actual problem and not like fighting amongst yourself was, paraphrasing, is essentially the point that was made in that interview. And it's like, yeah, I know, right? So I have had a weird experience, and these are things that they would do to Jesus or Jesus-like characters. They do it for recruiting, I guess, but also, just if they can't roofie molest you into a molester, they will make other people think you are, and it's like, okay, like, yeah, I guess I've had a lot of opportunity, but no bites really, huh? But just like the cop, that keeps on sending in the undercover into like the head shop or whatever. They're like, we know you sell weed. Come on, hook us up with an eighth. And they do that for years on end. They just imagine if it's for life, when you're a child into your adulthood. And that's the scope of things and the truth, that I have, the puzzle pieces that I have. And then that thing that seemed like a little thing, like me getting roofie possessed and whatnot and having to deal with that, that's a major fucking thing. That's worse than the sexual abuse, because that's where a lot of your crimes come from, because real life is a lot like Final Fantasy VII, and there was that evil corporation Shinra that was making monsters so then they could come in, because they can't ever be the fucking hero, but they could play the hero. They could cosplay the hero if they make some monsters to take care of, right? And that's like everything. That's why the U.S. and the Western Empire is so fucked up, because they do these like secret programs and they hide behind national security and non-disclosure agreements and all sorts of nonsense. And I love talking about this shit. But I defy the cults. So in some sense, in some cults of theirs, not all of them, but in some of them, they're like, we're just going to act like you're dead, and in some sense, they do that, too, and it's all really petty, and it's not really reflecting my inner fucking state at all, but just this illusion shit, just illusion after illusion after illusion, just illusions. So yeah, I'm pretty kind of over it. I'm tired of people, trying to weaponize my sexual abuse, though. And it's like, no, you got to go after sexual abusers and everything. And it's like, well, yeah, could we go after like, the Schmill Fates and the Billary uh, Dintons? You know, like could we go after those? You know, then you know, if you're just going to make a show out of it and just kind of, you know, and of course like the show, you know, mostly busts your own, but occasionally you catch a Zionist or something, and then they get off, then they go off to fucking Israel. Then they go off to Israel, and it's like, well, why don't they just show up on Chris Hansen's set and be like, look, we got you a one-way ticket to fucking, you know, Israel, you know, because that'd just be more direct and honest and everything. You know, so it's all this stupid game bullshit, but you know it involves gangs too, and it's just a lot of it's stupid. You know, so you know, but as I was saying earlier about the sex magic and everything, and that does interest me, and I guess, and I would be willing to consciously consent, you know, to you know some weird sexual shenanigans. You know, because I am one of those people, you know, that has been a target for life, and it hasn't been all bad, and it hasn't been all good. And you know, one of their little things that they do is that they roofie rape us, you know, for like life, you know. And it's just like I'll wake up suddenly and there'll be some cum in my ass, you know, and I didn't do anything, you know, and it's like okay, you know, so yeah, anyway, and people can't handle a lot of the truths and everything. Like I put a lot of that shit down to the family because then that solves the trans issue, that solves your vaccine issue, that solves being forced to go to school, that solves like a lot of your fucking problems while leaving some fucked up awkward situations, you know. You know, and but I'm like, you know what, if you just like let families, you know, raise their kids as they see fit with more reason than you have today, you'll have less problems. You won't have a system set up where it's just, you know, child molesting services, CPS, you know, and then you won't have the demons impregnating your the detainees, you know, especially the underage ones, right? Because there's a bunch of Zionists in the ICE and everything. So that's clearly what they're doing. So they're like, okay, well we can't, you know, so let's like round them up and then you could have sex with them, you know. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing, you know, with all these fucking systems when you try to restrict people's freedoms? And I'm not saying there shouldn't be any restrictions on anything, but when you try to restrict people's freedoms and especially the family, and you break up the family and everything, you know, because they got you all. They're like, look, the idea of freedom is you complain about something, and then we could put a law on the books. Oh my God, there's that boysenberry tree that's staining the sidewalk. Well, you maybe if you bitch about it enough, and we could get, you know, something on the books that gets rid of that boysenberry tree. And then that person over there, oh my God, they could be an animal abuser for not putting their fucking coat on their husky in the wintertime. You know, you get a bunch of Karens to complain about that, and then it gets like to insane. There's so much noise that you can't even focus on the fucking real problems, and that's, you know, how I you know, handle it mentally. You know, I'm like, okay, well, you know, it seems like families have a right to raise their kids as they see fit with more reason than you give today, but not unlimited reason, you know. But does that leave some awkward, fucked up situations? Yeah, but then you'll be attacked a lot less. You'll be attacked a lot less, and they won't force all these fucking things on you, you know, like they're forcing, like a bunch of rapists in government forcing things on you. That's not freedom, you know. What the hell, you know. So and that's how I you know, go about it. You know, I can't really control people roofie raping me and stalking me for life. You know, I get to talk about it. I don't need to be like inner turmoil, upset about it, blah 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 blah. You know, but I get to talk about it. Like I get to talk about it and be all casual about it, and just yeah, you know, and just mention it and mention some of the tricks of the trade, you know, right? You know, these are my rights granted to me because I'm not part of that group. Just like that one Baldwin motherfucker was talking about, right? You know, it's like I didn't subscribe to any cult, so therefore I'm not bound by your rules. And so therefore I make my own rules, you know? And yeah, so pretend as you like I'm really upset, but I have a hard time having sex with like one person, so and I was offering kind of like a more than one situation, and then the thing got removed and then I felt relieved. I was like, and that just reinforces my, yeah, I'm totally going to go to an orgy and just play with myself and then go. And that's the kind of attitude that you need if you're going to deal with the satanic people, right? So you can't, I could at least take it up the ass for others, right? So I got that going for me as well. It's something that they're into that they kind of like abused me into. Doesn't necessarily mean gay though, because they always conflate. They're like, yeah, we shoved things in his ass his whole life ever since he was a child, and now look at him. And then not only did we shove things in his ass, but we fucking made it seem like gay was bad and gay, and the power of suggestion and doing that shit to him. Just like they roofie rape me with their children and then have their children, of the child protectors or the fucking child fuckers just feel themselves up around me, or something weird, for life, So because if you can't make me a monster, it's easier to just get everyone to like pretend, right? And that's the thing. And that's what a lot of people subscribe to, a lot of nonsense shit when they join some fucking cult. They're like, yeah, you're gonna like, do this nonsense thing today to this person, and it's like, oh, okay. Sounds really lame actually. And it sounds like a lot of bad afterlife karma if you ask me. But, what do I know? I'm only the greeter into hell, which is another reason why they do these things, because they like feel rubbed wrong, and it's like, well, I'm not supposed to be as evil as the people that go into hell, mind you, right? So I am outside of hell. Um, so yeah, and they do what they can to try to psychological warfare, spiritual warfare, and it's just like whatever. I'm all right. I know I need to get my book done. I'm not going to use AI. Go fuck yourself. Um, but I could use a nice one in my life, and yeah, I've done my fair share of rejecting. Thankfully, I've rejected many Erica Kirks too. So I avoided that. I never, had children and got married with an Erica Kirk. So, I'm real ahead on that. But I see a lot of great people out there, and they all have a great female, and it's like, I know, right? I like, need me one of those. If only the community could stop getting their 10-year-olds to bend over around me, or like when I talk about it, it's like, yeah, I get like roofie raped by children and it gets a little fucked up. And then people like act like the victim, which is very suspicious for me. I'm like, wait a second, so you're the victim here, and there's a small, or some sort of percentage of some of the child protectors that just love doing evil things to others and using the child protection as a reason for it. Meanwhile, you're doing nothing about the child eaters, the child torturers, and murderers. You just pretty much nothing about that. But it's best that we just fight amongst ourselves and make up stuff and yabbly doo and total patterns of behavior, like I mentioned earlier with that shit. Um, yeah, like shove things up my ass and then like act like gay is really bad. And it was all like the Catholics did that hard to me. The Catholics in the Clarendon Hills town that I grew up in, at the Notre Dame school that I attended, would shove things in my ass and then be like, yeah, oh, you wouldn't want to be gay, Chris, and do that same shit, same, and that's how a lot of the psychological warfare goes. So then, I'm like, man, why are you even fucking around? Like, Child Protective Services has a near, if not a 100% sexual abuse rate. What the fuck's wrong with you? Your whole government is so illegitimate. And yeah, it's nice that the founding fathers, the nice Freemasons, put those protections in there, in the Bill of Rights, in our Bill of Rights. When the government becomes so corrupt that you have to like reset it. Yeah, yeah, because these things happen. These things happen, and I think the bankers is your biggest threat, your biggest actual national security threat. If your banks are going to be controlling your countries and everything, well, that sounds like a fucking, a legit national security issue, in my opinion, but what do I know? And I think a lot of the people that do work for the evil and everything, they can make out with more money if they help the light side out, and just fuck off, don't even need to, we're not even talking about executing or getting rid of the 13. We're just, how about we relocate them to the Rothschild Island, all right, and we give them some steady supplies with no fucking weapons, really. I mean, we could give them some swords or maces or whatever, but no long range weapons, and they could kind of chill it out there for a while, right? It's not as bad as they make it out to be. The Antarctica is much nicer than they let on. So, but anyway, and yeah, and there'll still be some sort of world order after this, but it doesn't need to be so shitty. Is the thing. 'Cause it sounds like really shitty. Sounds like you guys are going the way of the gray alien with no genitals, being totally lab grown and controlled by a fucking AI. That sounds like the path you're heading towards. But I need to get this information out there so people could make better decisions. Because it seems like the world really does, respond to me in great ways, and I've been totally mind blown and awe shocked and frozen shocked, for a really long time. Just like 2 years ago, I didn't even believe in any of this like paranormal stuff. So like 2 years, a couple months ago, I didn't really believe in all this paranormal stuff. Um, and so now I've had my perspective shift a whole lot, and I've learned a lot. I'm getting bored, antsy in my pantsy. I really do want to write the book. I really do. I just think that this fucking root canal is fucking me up way worse than I ever fucking realized. And when I get it removed, it'll be like those full body tension releases I had that made my orgasms okay instead of bad feeling orgasms. And that was only just recently. But when I never knew I had a tension problem until it was gone. And then I'm like, oh my God, you know. And then the same thing is going to be, with that. Sorry, my phone just kind of threw my train of thought off. It just beeped, blip blip. Um, so yeah, I think things are going to be okay. They're not, going as fast as we would all like them to go. I'm terribly sorry. I could have gotten the root canal removed like a week ago. Well, like 4 or 5 days ago. Um, but it was a little more financially comfortable to make it into August. And yeah, so and I'm not that upset about it. I'm more relieved than anything because I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I should participate because I'm a hot, occult, person, and I feel like willingly sharing it. But if people are going to be dicks about it, then it's like, okay, well, whatever, I mean, I have you guys sexually abused me a whole bunch secretly, all right, and then do all that gaslighting, psychological warfare nonsense. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should try to participate instead of just being raped all the time by the community, and they're like, blah, 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 and it's always just this nonsense. And it's like, fine, like, I'm fine with just myself, right? I hope I've proven this, like, because they like pretend like I need them and everything, and it's like, I really don't. I really don't need your sex or anything, weird sexual. I'm fine with myself. What I can use is a nice partner to help practice some positive light magic with, and to learn, and grow from, to where we both are growing and thriving off each other. And that doesn't necessarily mean sexual, all right? So I mean, it would be nice if that was in the cards, and I have no doubt it will be. But there's other things like, look, I could pleasure myself. Is there something else you could offer? Some good knowledge and wisdom, and you know, um, get me to want to be creative again. Like when people go around constantly acting like dicks and everything, you know, just it's not so inspiring. It doesn't really, get me inspired to do anything. Um, and people constantly playing their tricks, getting past lovers of mine or people that look exactly like the past lovers of mine, to be weird around me and everything, and to then blame and then to act like I'm like, the worst. Pretend like I'm the worst or whatever. If you get some sort of reaction out of me, I'm like, hey, you want to hang out sometime? Oh my God, Chris! It's like that. Sorry, Kitty, I didn't mean. Did I wake you up? Well, you wake me up. Come on. I got a really loud kitty, actually. He fucking cries at like 5:30 in the morning every morning, and I'm like, man, I didn't know I bought an alarm clock, but I guess I did. But yeah, like people, just doing all their subtle weird things, especially with the harassing comments that I don't really see that harassing anymore. I'm just like, whatever, okay, cult member. I just kind of see it as a cult member signal. They're like, nice necklace. Nice necklace, 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 nice necklace. Or if I start wearing the mask again, then they'll be like, nice mask, 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 nice mask. If I'm not wearing the necklace, then it's going to be nice hoodie, nice hoodie, nice hoodie, nice hoodie, nice hoodie. And I just like, okay, cult member, all right, cult member. I don't know, maybe you're a douchebag, maybe you're not. I don't know. Some of them are all right, some of them are not all right, So like I've said, and yeah, so yeah. Anyway, I think I felt like I've talked about what I wanted to talk about. Um, and you guys have a lovely night, and peace the fuck out. Hello. I needed to add, you know, that I'm not looking to join them. I could see the game and everything, and I think it's a really lame ass game. Um, I think a lot of people like you gotta protect the children, and yeah, but like your family, your community, the people that are in your circle, you know um, when you start going outside of that circle, then it's just totally weaponized. I think Chris Hansen, busted a few people and they had 30 children kidnapped. And, I mean, I guess that's good. But again, that's like one of the pawns. That's one of the pawns on this chessboard and everything. And y'all be going after the pawns and never after like the major pieces like the king or the queen or the bishop or the rook or the knight. You're just like, yeah, we got another pawn. And it's like, a lot of child protectors, but there also could be the child fuckers. They dress their children like sluts and shit and have themselves do their psychological warfare that they've been inflicting on children into their adulthood, and like have them, feel themselves up around, targets and shit. I'm just not going to subscribe to that. I'm not going to do that. And like letting families be, raise their families with, not unlimited reason but more reason that we have today, frees up a lot of that, being forced to take a jab, being forced this and forced that, and then everybody's getting fucking fucked. and it's just so fucking messy. It's just so fucking messy, and it's overly complicated. And the way that I do it is just let families be themselves. And no, I'm not going to, if I have children and everything, I'm not going to raise them like that. I think I would raise them like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, except I think Candace Owens would be one that dresses her. It's just a suspicion, but would dress her child like a slut to have them do inappropriate things around others, in child, protecting efforts. You don't go after the kidnappers, you don't go after the torturers, the secret experimenters on children, and the child eaters and murderers. But you're all like, here, let's like focus on, adults, you seeking consent from non-adults or almost adults. And that's supposed to be impressive, to the gods. That's supposed to be impressive. What? It's really not, and it's easy to have your emotions, hijacked for good causes. But also, another thing, with that Chris Hansen How to Catch a Predator show, it's really a demonic show, and there's the demon, there's the succubus that is totally like sexual, and then you got the albastar, which uses sexual shaming, and they almost work hand in hand, and they work together in very interesting ways. And yeah, I'm just not going to subscribe to the nonsense, and I'm just going to be like, okay, well, families have a right to raise, their children as they see fit. Does that mean you're going to have awkward situations like there was that 17-year-old, with that fucking child fucker, oh yeah, Seinfeld, right? And he was in his 40s or something, and that has an awkward situation, and it's like, what, is your family being forced and everything? Is that how you will run your family? That's not how I'll run my family. Is that how you'll run your family? Then let that be the answer, right? And because they're doing it anyway. They're doing it anyway. Everyone's like, the child, or the world is run by child fuckers, And it's like, okay, I'm kind of over that. Yeah, they bred for thousands of years, and they are amongst you all, and it seems like a huge percentage of the population. And I'm like, okay, well, that's nice. I guess and then they do these things, with a lot of the targeted individual stuff, or targeted people, the targeted spiritual entities, and they try to do not. It's similar to How to Make a Murderer, but it's really How to Make a Monster, and you fucking doing a lot of inappropriate things to me as a child. Jerking a dog off in front of me as a child. You're roofie possessing me as a child. You're roofie molesting me as a child. You're doing the psychological warfare early on as a child. Shoving things in my ass, then shaming if I develop any habit where I get enjoyment out of that, and on and on and on. And just, I mean, trying to make me a mass shooter and everything. And it's just like, I just going to leave the families up to the families, right? This is why family is so important. And I'm going to better focus on the actual like problems at the top of the chain there, instead of just endlessly fighting amongst yourselves, where you can't even fucking take back your captured corrupted government, or prevent your sons and daughters from being sacrificed by these fucking demons, in made up wars. You can't even rein in the rich people, that are doing evil things, and should actually pay a good chunk of taxes, and on and on and on. and you just and you can't focus on the major fucking issues because you're too busy fighting amongst yourselves, and it's just something that I am never going to subscribe to. And I'm just never going to subscribe to that. I'm not looking to join it or anything like that. I appreciate people raping me with their children into my adulthood, but no thanks, I guess. I already have a hard enough time, with very few exceptions. Very, very few. And hey, kitty, she got the zoomies. And so yeah, I just think that that's simpler. It is more simple in my mind. And yeah, my kitties are all fucking running around. I need to get going. All right, you guys take care. Hello, lovelies. I wanted to add, there was a lot of things that did happen to me, and in the greater picture of things, it happened for me. So then I could explain it. This is how they make mass shooters. This is how, parts of your government or all of it invents monsters so then they could cosplay hero. And it's a really, really big uh, puzzle piece, and I think a few of them, because they do the roofie possessing a lot. So when you hear those true crime things, it's like, oh my god, the perpetrator was like, it was like I was possessed. And it's like, right? Because a lot of that shit is real, that they get people to think it isn't real. And yeah, so I'm not into, a lot of the stuff that one side does, but I'm willing to kind of not even overlook it. I'm just like, well, let families, raise their kids as they see fit, and that like solves a lot of your problems right there. That solves most of your problems, doesn't it? And so yeah, there's a lot of things that happened to me. It hasn't been all bad, but there's been, a lot of major and subtle things that have happened, throughout my lifetime. And I get to talk about it. That's why I don't join a cult or anything. I do have this high level of divine protection, and I choose not to join any cult because, I got to talk about this shit. On the both sides, the child fuckers and the supposed child protectors. And it doesn't really seem to, there's going to be people upset at me on either end, but whatever. Hey, hey, my kitty's playing. My other cat, he's like, almost three times the size of my one cat, and she just like, wah, yeah, I know, you're just trying to play, buddy. I know. So, pardon that interruption. Totally lose my train of thought. But yeah, and I want to focus on the major issues of your world, and I can't do that if I'm just nitpicking and judging every situation. And this way, I hate less people, even though it's something I'm not subscribing to. And most of the people, in these cults or cult, sent very age appropriate women and females my age over the years. And then there's another that is very inappropriate, and they, just secretly roofie rape you with their children, which is something that happens. And I'm not sorry if you feel like the victim about it. You feel victimized probably because you like using child protection as a means of doing bad things to other people, way beyond an eye for an eye. And it's all very demonic. From the Chris Hansen shit is demonic, and you're just looshing people, doing the Albastar demon sexual shaming, because they probably been through something that I've been through, huh? A whole bunch, and then getting your children to do weird sexual inappropriate things around them, like the piece of shit cops at a head shop that is always asking the guy for, some drugs, but instead of doing that for months or years, try decades or a lifetime. That's literally what occurs, in America. They use the school system too to like, you know, help their demons feed off of others, which doesn't seem like it at the surface. They're like, well, the school bully he got detention and sometimes a suspension, and in very rare cases like an expulsion. But like, yeah, they use that, and they monitor the kid, like they monitor a lot of us through school, and they kind of like prop them up, and they're like, man, yeah, you really picked on kids like your whole life. We could use you, in this government agency, and then, right, and then your schools are all being like farms for looshing, and then it's all this negative fucking energy, and I just, I'm tired of hating on people and everything. I'm just going to focus on the child torturers, the child kidnappers, the child murderers. And then you guys could, try to figure out the stuff. But again, freedom makes people uncomfortable, and, I feel you should have the right to raise your family with more reasons that they give today. And does that create situations that would be very awkward? Yes, indeed. And there was another point I was going to make. Hang on. And it's, yeah. Oh, hey, kitty. And okay, so I remember. And it's not like I'm looking to join them. I'm not looking to join them. I'm not even saying the weird shit that they do is okay. But I'm trying to get to a point where your family is fucked with less, and that means you're just letting the family raise the family as they see fit, and that pretty much solves it, most of your problems. And then instead of fighting amongst yourselves and not offering, those all those perpetrators a free trip to Israel, on the How to Catch a Predator show. People try to make me a mass shooter, all sorts of things, like a little thief, to, by just doing fucked up things to me as a child. Stuff that's occurring right now on a mass scale. I guess, if anyone wanted a red flag, it would be I got migraine headaches a lot at this one friend's house, and that's probably something child raisers should be aware of. But don't think that your child will fucking just straight up say, I always get a headache at this person's house. They always had like some Aleve or Advil or something to kind of help me with the migraine. And then I don't think I really brought it up to my parents when I was a kid. But I was being secretly poisoned, I highly suspect, by this family. And this family where I would only go over to the Andrews house and only ever get a headache there. I wouldn't get a headache at Ryan's house. I wouldn't get one at Nick's house. I would get one specifically at the Andrews house. Always, always. I didn't get one over at Danny's house. So yeah, and yeah, I know a lot of people are driven by emotion, and as well as, look, we gotta fucking do something to somebody, but we gotta, mask it in a good cause. And those are the people that do get upset because I give the game away. I give a lot of this game away with my parts of disclosure. And that's fine. I will take the ostracization and the occasional bullshit that they fucking throw at me, to be able to speak about this stuff. You are a loud kitty. This is what I have to listen to at 5 in the morning. He is like meow 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 every day 5 in the morning. So I need to get to bed earlier so I could not get woken up halfway through my sleep. I got a kitty cat alarm clock that doesn't have a snooze button on it. Yeah. So yeah, I really have a life of people doing bad things to me. I turn out very well. I have some odd opinions, I guess. But I think if you gave it some thought and everything, it's just you want to protect your children and your family, and you're not subscribing to that stuff, just like me. Just like me, I don't have kids though, that I know about. So and let that be the answer, and that gives rises to awkward situations. Then I think it's more beneficial to protect you and the majority of families out there than it is to start, restricting everything. And they're going to use those restrictions against you, like in Child Protective Services, where it's like 100% sexual abuse rate, and the ICE detention facilities that are literally breeding demons. Because, like, you guys live in a demon haunted world, and I just recognize that. And you guys need to learn to play together nicer instead of the shit that is occurring now, where they do this bread and circus stuff everywhere. They endlessly distract you. I have a hard time myself, with scrolling all the time. There's a lot of good information out there, and I keep learning interesting new things every day, and I need to just kind of stop, because it can be wasting my time. I have a book I need to fucking write. I need to find encouragement somewhere. I haven't really been that encouraged. Things have been really nice around here the past year, and I've still been really discouraged and uninspired. And I'm trying to find that. And, it sucks that people, the extreme psychological warfare. I mean, there's so much stuff to talk about. It's just overwhelming. Especially when I'm not quite a Whitney Webb that like remembers like all this stuff. Like, she is amazing. I struggle, still. I had a lot of brain damage, and it happened for me so I could, be able to explain all this stuff. But Roofie possessing me, right? This is just like one out of a bunch of things. Roofie possessing me to try to make love not work, because there's a lot of good guys out there that I see, and they have like a good, strong woman behind them. The two Jims, there's the Jim Brewer, and then the Jimmy Dore, right? And it's like, yeah, wow, I could really use that, Jesus. I'm so vulnerable and everything, single most of my life, and everyone's getting their of age and underage children to fucking feel themselves up around me. It's weird. But so you roofie possess me to try to make love not work. Then they try going, well, maybe he's gay, because he can't make it work with the women, so maybe he's gay. And then they're like, well, he can't make it work with anyone, so like, let's get the child protectors to do their weird stuff that, like, it's amazing what they get you to do. It's fucking amazing that they get the child protectors to do that stuff. They're like, look, we're just doing it for protection of children. Instead of just teaching your kids to like say no, just simply say no and just opt out. And yeah, there's some people looking for some underage stuff, and why don't you guys funnel them over to Israel, which should be on the Rothschild Island, by the way. You should, banish them over there, despite any space alien treaties. And so, yeah, it just becomes this huge psychological operation where, like, oh, well, we raped him in the ass a whole bunch when he was a child going to Notre Dame and, throughout the community that he lived in. But it didn't happen all the time, but it happened like enough to get a sexual abuse response out of him. And then we're going to put magic on him that makes love not work. And then when love doesn't work, then we're going to fucking say, hey, he's gay. And then if that doesn't work, then we're going to like bend our children over. Like, I know it's just like, like an endless, and it's stuff that demons would do. And this is stuff that demons would do to Jesus and Jesus-like figures. When Mel Gibson talks about all this stuff, it's just this fucking torture porn that the demons, this fetish torture porn that the demons get off on. and you're not even bringing up the sexual stuff that they do would do to Jesus, that they would totally do to Jesus, you know. And yeah, so that just kind of makes me think about that. It's like, well, okay, so you're just pushing the demons, fetish, torture, porn of how they imagine Jesus. It's amazing they get you to attack Jesus like people, as well, and they're like, well, for the protection of children. It's like, yeah, I haven't violated like anyone, but I surely do get violated a whole lot. And it happens in super secretive ways where people mess with my consciousness. So then, like, my body could remember, but my mind quite can't, and yeah, it's how they make a lot of monsters, too. Some of us turn out very well, and some of us don't turn out very well, so that's all, anyway. Yeah, so I just wanted to add that. I'm not saying, you got to join them or anything like that. I just want to hate less people. Okay, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. All right, well, then I guess I'm not going to, I'm still not going to subscribe to that. And thank you for the community members that always, sent me a appropriate aged woman. Sorry, I was roofie possessed as a child to make that shit not work. I think I'm over it or getting over it, but I'm pretty sure I'm over it. But I still have the echoes of the possession too. So many aspects of the psychological warfare where they would send me, throughout my life, equal age, girls and women, to just like reject me. It's just their only purpose is to attract me and to reject me, right? And then I'm like, okay, well, that's like a game I'm not going to play, and they have sent me some nice women too, but again, the roofie possession, right? And so then I was possessed, had some bad magic on me to not make love work, so then I could look like a dick there, and I could, and it's just all this illusion stuff, really. It's just all this illusion nonsense. I guess I could be prone to like hitting on a younger person, but not too young. All right, kitty. But yeah, then there's this one, group of them or a different group, and they take things way too far often. I think, that would be the Candace Owens, get their daughter to dress like a fucking slut and have them do odd things around another person because for the protection of children. Maybe not. Maybe she doesn't do that, but that is something that does occur. And yeah, I just can't look at the stuff that they do on that show and other shows like it. They're like, so you're not going to go after the fucking kidnappers. You're not going to go after the torturers. You're not going to go after the eaters and murderers, of children, but you're going to go after the adults that are essentially looking for consent. And it's like, yeah, I know. When you fucking say it like that, then it's like, damn. Then it's like, oh shit, that's, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like a bunch of downward punching bullshit, and it's like, and there's places that facilitate that, like, in Israel. So why don't you get them, like, congratulations, you won yourself a ticket to Israel, like, just be more honest. That's all, and I would appreciate the honesty and the less fighting amongst yourselves. And yeah, the freedom is awkward and uncomfortable, but that's just the way it should be, to have less problems. But everyone seems fine and having 50,000 problems or more, so I guess you guys could go that way too. Kitties. Yeah, All right. I'll see you guys later. Peace the fuck.